What up, everybody? It's your boy Kentario, and I'm back again for another episode of Christ and Comic Books. And today we are going to be doing a review of the entire series of Ms. Marvel. Now, the goal of this channel is to take certain types of media, such as manga, anime, comic books, and hopefully to see if there is, in fact, a Christian message to be found in this type of content. And if not, what are there things that we should be concerned about when watching this type of media? Now, if you like this channel, if you like this type of content, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button. That way you guys are keeping up with everything that I am putting out, as well as you hit that notification bell. That way you'll get the heads up. Not only that, make sure that you hit that like button, because that will boost this channel, boost these types of videos within the YouTube algorithm. Also, please make sure that you leave a comment in the comment section as well. Why? Because I love to hear from those of you that are watching this type of content, getting your opinions and your perspective as well, because it does mean something to hear from you, to hear your voice. Now, as I said, today we're going to be looking at Ms. Marvel and doing a full series review. And first off, let me make sure that I do apologize to you guys, because instead of doing a review of episode 5 and 6 like I originally planned, I decided, I'm just going to go ahead and review the whole entire thing. Quite honestly, I was very disappointed with the last 2 videos that I put out on here. I thought they really weren't my best work, and so I wanted to come back, do this full review.
Those last 2 videos were trash, man. I can't believe you put that out.
Man, come on, bro. Leave me alone.
Like, dude, come on. What were you thinking, bro? Like, you didn't put any thought into that. Nothing was even funny. You was lacking, bro. All your excess clips was the funny stuff. You need me to do it? I can do a better job than you.
Okay. Can you let me do the video?
I'm pretty sure if you just...
Okay.
All right, cool.
Can you let me do the video, please?
Now, shut up. Go ahead. Shut up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyway, as we were talking about Ms. Marvel, I want to go ahead and hit on this with you guys, is that this show wasn't the best that the Disney Plus MCU has been able to produce.
What did he say?
So it wasn't their best show. I'm going to hit on a couple of the pros and cons that you'll find within the series here later, but that's one of the things I wanted to make sure to go ahead and say, is that it wasn't their best work. However, what I do give them kudos on is that this was their first new gen superhero that they're introducing without having the backup or the help of any other superhero. The closest we get to seeing any other superhero is at the end when she shapeshifts into Carol Danvers, but that's as far as you get. She doesn't have that support. She doesn't have that help. It's strictly just Kamala Khan being a solo hero, stepping into that role and trying to grasp what it means to be a hero in her neighborhood. Now let's kind of just go ahead and do a rundown of what actually is happening in Ms. Marvel. What we have taking place in this series is we have a young girl by the name of Kamala Khan, who is a young Muslim girl here in America. She's highly intelligent, and she has a deep love and relationship with her family. But one of the things that sets her apart, not only from her family, but even from the people at school, is that she has a high imagination. She is highly into the superheroes, particularly Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. She loves her. She loves hyping her up. She wants to be like her. That is her hero. That is who she looks to, and in a sense, I guess you could say, gives her motivation to push forward and do great things. So much so, you get a little hint of this, is that she has her own social media. She has her own YouTube channel called Sleepy Sloth, Lazy Sloth. Can't believe I forgot that already.
What?
But she has her own YouTube channel. With this YouTube channel, that's where she goes to kind of express what's going on in her imagination. But that has begun to affect her schoolwork. That has begun to affect, what is she actually going to be doing with her future. And to cut the long story short, she ends up finding a bangle amongst some things that her grandmother has shipped to the family, all the way from Pakistan. And this bangle, she ends up putting it on her wrist to make her costume as she prepares to go to Superhero Comic-Con, or Superhero Con here in her city. She prepares to go to that. She wants to use that to go with her costume. But as she, of course, takes that, goes to this convention, her powers end up awakening through the bangle. She goes through this whole flip that makes you see people in the background of it, which hints to a different race of people that she's actually related to, and then her powers kick in. She demonstrates her powers at this convention. In one sense, she causes a lot of ruckus. And in another sense, she saves somebody's life. And this is how she goes on that journey. It's like, oh snap, I have powers. Now I can work towards becoming a superhero. That's where she's at. And so she, of course, she has her training montage. She works with a young man who is really, I would argue, one of her closest friends named Bruno. And Bruno, being highly intellectual as he is, was able to observe her powers and her abilities and give her the heads up like, hey, these are powers that are being awakened from within you, not powers that are being manifested from the bangle. And so in this journey, what we end up finding out is she's trying to learn. It's like, okay, well, where does this all come from? What am I? And she finds this to correlate to her lineage and her past. Because as she's going on this journey, she's having little small visions along the way. But she's trying to learn a bit more about her family. Her mother doesn't care too much about her grandmother, so now she's asking more questions about her grandmother. There's something going on with her great-grandmother who ended up disappearing many years ago. And so there's questions about her, but no one wants to say anything. Okay, so what ends up happening is a new young boy is introduced into the story named Kamran, who ends up starting going to her school and following her and being interested in Kamala. And of course, Kamala falling for the hot boy. That's where she was at. Turns out he's interested in her. But the real reason that he was interested in her was because he was tracking her. Because of the bangle, they were able to track her down and find out that he is actually a Jinn. And there is a group of Jinn who are looking to get back to their dimension. Now, this is not an entirely different universe among the multiverse. This is a different dimension. So, they're trying to get back home, and the bangle is the way to do that. They introduce themselves to be friends of Kamala, but we later learn that they're actually enemies. And as we go on this journey, learning about them as being the enemies, this makes her a bit more scared about, you know what am I? Who am I? Why is this happening in my life? I need to figure this thing out. We got ourselves a mystery here, y'all. And in the midst of trying to figure out this mystery, this ends up taking us to Pakistan. Because not only is Kamala seeing these visions, her grandmother Nani is seeing these visions as well. So as we end up going to Pakistan, we get a touch of a bit more of the Muslim culture and the Muslim race. We get the Muslim culture and belief. We get a lot more of that. And that is something that I thought was beautiful, which I don't want to get too hyped up on, although I'm highly tempted. But we get there, we experience the culture a little bit. She meets even some of her cousins and things of that nature, but she's also introduced to another organization, another group, and that is called the Red Daggers. And the Red Daggers reveal the Jinn aren't trying to just get home. The Jinn are trying to merge the two worlds. They're trying to bring their dimension in to merge with our world so that they can live as one within this world. But if they do that, it's really going to cause destruction. It's not going to bring about unity. Just thinking about that, guys, has me like, my mind is flowing. But in the end, they end up finding them once again. The Jinn end up finding them once again. And in this pursuit, they end up tag teaming to take down the Jinn. But what happens is, as the leader of the Jinn strikes the bangle ends up teleporting Kamala to the past. What this ties to is, if you'll check out some of the other videos, you'll see that I've tapped onto this as well. But what this ties to is, there was a story told by Kamala's father telling the story of the great-grandmother. And in the sense of the story was that when her grandmother was little, her grandmother couldn't find the mom. The father ended up going missing as they were all rushing to get on this train to escape the tyranny that they were experiencing in India. They were looking to get away to Pakistan. But Nani was lost. The grandmother was lost. But what led the way for grandmother to be able to find her father was there was a starry lit road that led to where he was. And she followed the stars to get there. And this was all believed to be, in some sense, either due to Nani's actual abilities or this being the great-grandmother that did this for her daughter to make sure that she got to her husband. And come to find out, in this, we not only get the backstory of what really happened to the great-grandmother, but this also reveals that Kamala was the one that led the way. Now, this backstory that we get is really telling us that the Jinn were working together with the great-grandmother, but when the great-grandmother learned the real intentions of the other Jinn, she separated herself and ran away. But in separating herself, she found herself her own family and established her own family and wanted to protect that family. And she ends up dying in the process due to the leader of the Jin as of currently. She ends up killing her. And so that's where Kamala actually is the one that brought her grandmother to her father in the past. She ends up zooming back, and of course, there's like this rift that takes place, and this rift ends up attacking everyone. Where the Jin thought they could use that to get home, they touched it and immediately died. And now they have to close this thing. So Cameron, one thing I didn't hint on, but I did explain it in my last video. But Cameron partners with Kamala versus going against Kamala. But in the midst of all of that, they all end up getting arrested. And with them all getting arrested, because of Cameron's betrayal, as the other Jin broke out, they left Cameron behind. Now, Kamala has her Naruto talk no jutsu moment, talking the leader of the Jin into, hey, do the right thing. You don't have to do this. Think about your son Cameron. Think about him instead and do the right thing. And so she sacrifices herself, closes this rift, but ends up transferring the powers from the rift to Cameron. Not something that is clearly explained. We'll talk about that in a minute, but those powers got transferred over to him. And now that Cameron has these powers, Cameron breaks out. Now, the group that we're talking about here that imprisoned them in the first place, this is a group known as Damage Control. Now, as Kamala first shows up and demonstrates her powers at the convention, this gets the attention of Damage Control, bringing them in because they want to take her in. And they don't want to take her in just to like, hey, we see that you have superpowers. Like my first video, I thought they were going to maybe be looking to make a new mini SHIELD team. No, they're looking to take them in and imprison them. You got powers, we got a problem, we need to take you in, right? That was the issue that we were seeing. They even entered into the mosque where the Muslims worship and where they have their services, just to, of course, interrogate and to find out if they could find Miss Marvel, if they could find Kamala wherever she was. But at the time, they couldn't find her. And so this leads to, with Cameron breaking out of their prison, they're looking for him. And in them looking for him, Bruno tag teams with him to help him try to escape their clutches. They chase them all the way down to their high school, where Kamala, her friend Nakia, as well as Zoe, her other friend, and her big brother, they all tag team together to, and simply put, take down Damage Control and try to get Cameron to safety. Because whereas he has these new powers, they're also causing him an extreme amount of pain. And the safest place they can get him to is the Red Daggers, to keep him safe and keep him out of their clutches. But they end up fighting them off. Cameron learns the truth of what happened to his mother passing, and Cameron is now in this mindset of they'll never understand us, they will never, they killed my family, they left me alone, this is their fault. Like, he's trying to place blame here on why he's in this situation, and feels as though he needs to take down Damage Control because they will never stop. But Kamala not only stops Damage Control from getting to him, she ends up also comforting him, consoling him, and getting him to go ahead and get away. Leave and get away. But what this does also in this moment is this leads to the people of the community coming together to also protect Kamala and to protect Cameron in this instance. So this was a very powerful way to actually bring the series to a close in the way that they did that. And I love it, I love it, I love it. But she ends up becoming the hero due to the conversation she has with her father on a rooftop. He ends up leading to her hero name becoming Miss Marvel. Alright, now let's get into the pros and the cons of Miss Marvel. I want to start off by talking about the cons. And speaking about this, I want to acknowledge that they did do that power change thing, and the weird part about it is it wasn't just about the power change that happened. There's not only the power change, the Inhumans have been removed. They introduced Jin, which in fact the Jin have nothing to do with the origin of Miss Marvel and how she has her powers and who she's related to. None of that correlates to her actual origin. It's almost like she's an entirely different character. They have her face, but then we have all these new abilities. So that, in and of itself, I'll be honest, I like more comic book accuracy. I prefer that when I'm watching Marvel movies and Marvel series. But I am not so concerned with it that I can't enjoy the series. I can enjoy the series in spite of it, but it does kind of be like, oh, you know, that's kind of where it leaves me. But otherwise, like, that was one of the things that kind of brought me down. Was just like, man, they really did steer away a little bit. But like I said in that post-credit scene, seeing that she still went through a shift changing into Captain Marvel, which did in fact happen with the comic books, you know, okay, they at least kept that. Now, another thing that I would say for the series that is a turnoff is that it felt rushed. And what I mean by that is, we have her getting powers, we have her building this relationship between family, between her friends, but then when we introduce the Jinn, it's just like, okay, Jinn are friends. No, they're actually our enemies. Then we have Damage Control, and Damage Control is an enemy. Then we have the Red Daggers. Are the Red Daggers friends or enemies? Seems like they're friends. But we bring in the Red Daggers, and then the Red Daggers are gone after an episode. So it's just like an in and an out, and then new people and new people.
We're going to keep going fast. We're going to start slow, but we're always going to finish fast.
And we don't dig in deep about what these people actually are and what they're capable of. Like, you introduce the Jinn, and then the Jinn are from a different dimension, and all the Jinn do is fight with these other weapons. There's nothing special about them outside of what seems to be immortality, because they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So that's something that kind of left me, like, with all of these questions, that unless they do a season 2, or unless they're going to do it in the series of the Marvels, we're not going to get an understanding of all of this that was introduced in the show. And so that kind of just leaves me wanting more and disappointed because I know I'm not going to get more. And that's one of the things that hurt me about that. To jump into all of those different things with no explanation, and knowing we're not going to get an explanation, kind of left me at a loss. Now, this next con, you can call me petty. I don't care. It ain't going to bother me none. And it's just the way that I view movies and TV series and the certain type of things that I expect when I'm watching them, okay? Deal with it. No! One of the things that made me I got a little mad when this happened at the end of the show is, like I said, when Damage Control was coming to swarm everybody, you have this instance where everybody's rallying together to defend her and protect her, and she is our neighborhood hero, she's our Muslim hero, she's this, yeah, we're going to do everything we can for her. And because they portray her in this fashion, the way that they did the whole series, she's giving Spider-Man vibes, she's giving Peter Parker vibes, she's not even giving Captain Marvel vibes, she's not giving none of that, she's giving Spider-Man vibes. And she's giving Spider-Man vibes, she's not losing anybody, she's not losing anything, she's got everybody on her side. And a lot of the people that are really close to her know her identity even. And it's just like, yay! Now, hear me out. This makes me mad because Spider-Man has nothing. No one even knows who he is. Spider-Man is alone right now, and that bothers me. Spider-Man always gotta lose someone or lose something, and that's all Spider-Man be going through, and he still be pressed to be a hero. And that tears at my heartstrings, but that's why I love Spider-Man. Now, but Miss Marvel here, it's just like, oh, we're gonna support you. Hey, we will support you. Hey, we will support. There's all this support for Miss Marvel, but then Spider-Man got nothing, and that bothers me because he's my favorite superhero. He's my favorite superhero. But I'll live with it. I can't do anything about it. I'll live with it because this is the only reason I'll live with it. Because that leaves room for them to have her experience loss in a familial sense or from a friendship standpoint. That opens up the door for her to experience that. Now, you could say, well, we don't want to redo the same thing that we did with Spider-Man. Absolutely not. But at the same time, she's got to experience reality a bit more, because just because she's willing to step into this position, just because she has all the support of the people, doesn't mean she's not going to be at risk of losing these people, but putting herself out there, which is one of the things that we learn with Spider-Man, at least comic book wise, is that in putting himself out there and letting people know who he is and all of that stuff, that puts everybody at risk also. So that's something that I believe that they can open the door for with Miss Marvel's character in the future. But as of right now, with the way that they did it, it's just like, man, get out of here, bro. She ain't Spider-Man. Get out of here. Get out of here. But that does bring me to this, right? It brings me to the pros. Now, when it comes to the pros about her character, right? I love how they made her someone that didn't just immediately grasp how to be a hero. They made it to where she somewhat grasps her powers a bit better, but they constantly put her in this position of making a mistake and then correcting for the mistake, making a mistake and correcting for the mistake, struggling and barely being able to defend myself. That was her character most of the series. That I respected. I respected that because it shows that you can't just walk up into heroism and do it. And as a matter of fact, you can't step into it and do it well. So when that was manifested in this series, that was perfect. I thought that was perfectly illustrated. They did an amazing job with that. Going as far as back as in episode 1, when she demonstrated the power of the bangle at the convention, you know, she caused some things to stumble and fall over and all of this stuff. And what happened, I said this is the first video, but I love this moment. And what happened was, Thor's hammer came swinging down like a piñata, and boom, it hit the character of Zoe, knocking her into the air. But the reason, here's how it did it. You had Kamala here, and you got Zoe here. They're looking at each other. Kamala looks back and sees the hammer coming this way, about to hit them. And instead of pulling Zoe out of the way, she just moves herself. And so Zoe gets hit. But then she saves her as she's falling from the sky. So it shows, you know, I missed an opportunity to help someone, but let me correct for her. So she saves her. Right? She does that all throughout the thing. And even Bruno says it because, like I said, my second video, Bruno and her were going to go practice. She knocked something over trying to show off her power, but then she also catches it where it almost crushed Bruno. And she tried to hype herself up. Look, I saved you. He's like, yeah, but you also are the reason I was in this situation. I thought that was amazing. And then you see her as she's fighting against the Jinn. She's having to just block and hide and all of this stuff. Boom, bow, and having to really struggle. In the last episode, she's having to partner with her friends to work together to stop damage control versus her just going powers ablazing to stop damage control. Even more so, now she did have to also balance this, which was, again, credit. They did beautifully. She had to stop Kamran from attacking damage control and killing them, and at the same time stop damage control from killing Kamran. And I respect it. I respect it. And I will say this, I don't hate the powers as much as other people do. I'm mad that they changed it. I don't hate the powers. With the powers, she was able to show a versatility to them. Instead of trying to use them to just fly like most people do, she uses them to make platforms, which she runs across the platforms to get to where she wants to go. I loved it so much. They did this running scene when she finally got her costume. By the way, her mother gave her the costume. She has this costume, and then as she goes through her first run through the city, you see her hopping from platform to platform, going from one building to the next building, platform to platform, and stopping at a red light and waiting until it turns green till she goes again. I love it. That's some of the best stuff about her powers is the versatility, the creativity. She went from just making extensions of her limbs and platforms to fully coating her body in the form, making herself large, catching flying cars before they hit a group of people. So making shields, making barriers along walls. She's very versatile in the use of her abilities. One of the other things that the series got right was relationship building. Now, what do I mean by relationship building? The relationship between her and her friends, and the relationship between her and her family. Now, you guys already know, I'm Team Bruno. Why do I say I'm Team Bruno? Because they got the Kamala out here pulling all the boys. Kamala's got Bruno backing her. She's got Kamran backing her. She's got Kareem backing her. And Kareem, one of the Red Daggers, the young boy from the Red Daggers. Got him on speed dial if she ever needs anything. Got that boy wrapped around her finger. She out there protecting Kamran. But Bruno is that boy. Bruno is supportive of Kamala. He's supportive of Miss Marvel. He's supportive of her Muslim belief. Like, he backs his girl 100%. Everybody else kind of backing her from these different perspectives. But Bruno backs everything. He's there for everything. Everything. She did my boy dirty though, man. She did my boy dirty because she out there about to make out with Kamran while they in this heated situation.
No! God, please, no!
Him and all the friends are trying to help him get away, and he about to put the moves on Kamala. I was upset. I didn't like that at all. And you had to do my boy like that, but it's cool. It's cool. Team Bruno, all day, all day. But I like that relationship building, introducing 3 different people. I was concerned about it at first, but the way that they did it kind of brought a level of balance, and the way that you get emotional, wondering and hoping, well, who she's going to get with? Oh my goodness. Love it. I even love Nakia, which is one of her friends that's in the show as well. They used her to really kind of put to tackle some, I guess you could say, religious struggles, being that we're now pushing for women to be able to be in more positions of leadership. She entered into a position of leadership within the mosque at the church, I guess you could say, and there was a little bit of not wrestling, but you can see that wasn't an easy thing to do, at least for her character to step into that position. But a part of the influence for her being able to do that and being willing to do that stems from Kamala being that support system that she's had, and her having her back the way that she always has. That motivates Nakia. And so of course that's why we see at the end Nakia's backing her. And that's powerful to see this bond of friendship being taken care of and maintained within the series, while we're seeing her trying to step into this heroism. But her friends always have her back. The best thing that they have done was with her and her family. I love how they did this with her and her family. They weren't trying to make this to where the ideals and the belief system of the family is corrupt and evil, and they've just been trying to steer their daughter in the wrong direction. It wasn't like that. It was just the practical, classical, parents not understanding kid not understanding parents, not fully understanding everything that they came from, but once they do, they are able to come together in the end. And here's what I'm gonna tell you. I finished the series, Turning Red. I watched the movie, and the relationship between Kamala and her mother is about exactly the same as the relationship between the daughter and the mother, between May and her mother and Turning Red. It is almost identical. We got a young girl with a high imagination and this love of boys and wanting to do her own thing. But when she comes home, she has this love and respect for the practice and the culture of her household and loves her family and is trying to balance the two and become her own person. But mama's not for it, because mama really just wants to protect her daughter. And then the reason she wants to be so protective of her daughter is because she wasn't getting that kind of nurturing from her mother. And so, but in the end, we're all able to come together as just this unified family. They did this in Miss Marvel, exactly what they did in Turning Red, which in my opinion is not bad. That dynamic, that storyline is beautiful. It is beautiful. But I love it. I'm just telling you guys, I loved it. That's one of the saving graces about the series, is that they were willing to go that route and tackle that. And look, man, the brother is hilarious. The dad is hilarious, and an A1 steak sauce pops. I'm telling you guys, like this dad, man, he was for his daughter going to the convention where the mother wasn't, and so he even talked mom up, like, come on, let's let her daughter go. But in them talking, he's like, hey, we'll go as Hulk. We'll go as I'm Hulk and you're Hulk, and we could do this together. Yeah. And she shut them down. And when she shut them down, and you saw how heartbroken the father was, dang, I felt that, and I was like, dang, Kamala, you dirty, Kamala. That wasn't right. So that's this show does a great job with family, friends, and introducing someone to being a hero. I think they effectively tackled each and every one of these things. That's why they have such good pros. I would actually recommend this series, and I would even say that I would recommend this show for Christians as we get into our Christian perspective. In essence, the show Miss Marvel is about a Muslim American superhero. That's it. That's what we're getting in the show. Talking about her faith and her culture, but her wanting to step into heroism. The fears that the parents have with their child stepping into heroism, conflicting with some aspects of their culture and their faith. So they hit on all of these things within the show. And what this does is, and this is why I would recommend this to Christians, though it's not 100% made to speak to Christians, the power that the Christians can take from that is us being able to not only experiencing that in our own lives, children wanting to do things that parents are considering to be evil or corrupt or not of God or even demonic, dare they even say, hindering the opportunities that some of these children can go into based off of how the parents respond to those things. And so, even more so, for us to be able to, as a community, as Christians, as believers in Jesus Christ, to be able to make storylines similar to this and even it's encouraging our children, though, that into stepping into superheroism and liking the hero world and liking Marvel comics, liking DC comics, liking anime, and liking manga. You know, that warfare right there is literally this show. And when I was thinking about this, right, what I was thinking about was, man, what if they did with this with a Christian character? What if they did this with a Christian character? And why do I say that, right? Because as many American characters as they have, as many opportunities that they had to write a script where there is an American character who is strong in their faith, also wanting to step into heroism. There is no Marvel story written. There is no MCU story that's illustrated in that way. But they showed that respect to the Muslim faith. Now you can argue that, well, that's because they're conforming to the world. That's because, you know, they're all against Christianity. Everyone hates Christianity. You can argue that. But the other aspect you want to keep in mind too is that we could actually do a story like that. We don't need Marvel or MCU to do a story like that. This is inspirational for Christians to write a story like that. That's what I love the most about Miss Marvel. Is like, I was watching that, I was like, man, what if she was a Christian? Man, it would probably be something similar to this. It would probably be something like that. That's what was running through my mind. Okay, and that wasn't even just for me to do this video. This was in my mind when thinking about Christian stories. That's how I do all stories. I'm just like looking at it from a Christian perspective. That's how I do everything. If I can't do it, I'm not watching it. So that brings me to just a couple of scriptures that I want to acknowledge that don't necessarily support doing a story like this, but that can tie to what we get in the series. Colossians chapter 3, verse 18 through 21. Now, this verse is, of course, speaking of the structure and the conduct of the household, where you're having, you know, the husbands to loving their wives and committing themselves to the wives. You have the wives submitting to their husbands. You have children that needing to make sure that they're being obedient to their parents so that their days may be long on the earth in this verse. But then you also have where the parents also do not need to provoke their children to wrath. And that's what happens here in this show, where we were on borderline of, oh snap, they could be so resentful of her being a hero that she's genuinely going to rebel and do her own thing anyway, and this. It wasn't that simple. It was more so the parents, when they learned the truth of her power, when they learned what she had been doing, when they learned all that she went through, she wasn't ridiculed, she wasn't punished, she wasn't hated for it. It was none of that. It was support. They supported her. They backed their daughter. They believed in their daughter. They even made the costume for their daughter. They made the hero name for their daughter. That right there was keeping her from being provoked. Which even more so, when it comes to the topic of rebellion, is often illustrated, it's often taught that the child ends up into rebellion because the child is not heeding what the parents have taught. But a lot of times, some forms of rebellion can stem from provocation. You can provoke a child to rebellion, where you're teaching them one thing, but you're demonstrating something else, and that provokes a child to be rebellious. And in some sense, that's what Kamala was doing. Kamala was embodying all the things that she'd been taught, that had encouraged her, that motivated her, that are the foundation of who she is, that stem from her faith. All of those things, in that moment, had they not supported that, they would have looked hypocritical, thus leading to her to be more rebellious, which she would have been probably working towards heroism, but it would have led to more damage to her as a person in that process, which is what a lot of young people go through when they are looking to do things and become certain things, and the parents are stark against it without understanding. And so, but that's what was beautiful about that. Hey, don't provoke your children to wrath. We're definitely needing to be more obedient as children, honoring our parents, that our days may be long on this world, but we also do not want to provoke our children, that our children end up going in the opposite direction of what it is that we try to teach them. Now, when we are looking at all that she went through with the community, being that hero for her community, and then damage control showing up as the opposition to her as a hero, regardless of whether or not she's good. The thing is, when I think about this, I think about Daniel in the book of Daniel, and there's a lot that Daniel went through that's not exactly the same, but there are some similarities there that I want to touch on. You see, with Kamala, she in her community, she's stepping up to be a hero, but of course, in her stepping up to be a hero and her being different, being that she has powers, There's a problem with that, hence damage control coming in. Operating according to, from what I can surmise, the government and their expectations of keeping these people with powers under control, right? And then we have similar aspect to that with Daniel, being that the Christians were overrun and taken in by King Nebuchadnezzar, and they were subject to his rule. They were subject to his belief system. There was a lot going against them, being that they had a different faith and a different belief. They were against God, and they wanted to prove that their God was better than the true and living God. And so with that being said, Daniel and them did not rebel against the nation to show themselves to still be believers in God. They weren't like, we'll fight you all no matter what because we truly believe in God. That wasn't the stance. Daniel took the approach of, you know what, I'm going to actually operate as one of your higher qualified, as one of your wise men. I'm going to be one of your wise men, one of those people you come to for advice, someone you come to interpret your dreams. Daniel was put in that position. Now, in Daniel being put in that position, Daniel was expected to eat the same things that they ate. But how did Daniel respond to being put in a position of eating the way that they did? He instead fasted and ate according to what he would promise to eat in the will of God, which would be vegetables, which was fruit and nuts, and drinking only water, versus partaking of anything that they would serve to their gods. And that in and of itself allowed for them to show who genuinely was an enemy, who the true and living God was, and that they were wiser. But they yet still used those gifts and abilities, not simply to amplify themselves, but to be a contribution to King Nebuchadnezzar, though he's of a different nation and serves a different God. They still use their abilities to help support them and operate accordingly, which is what you see with Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel is someone that she's originally from Pakistan. They're living in America. Man, the oppression that Muslims must go through here in America is different, and dare I even argue it, to some extent, not entirely, but to some extent, a little bit worse than what we as Christians go through here when we're talking directly when it comes to, our belief systems and our faith. They go through something different, if I would argue. And to be put in that position, you could choose, well, we're going to rebel against you no matter what and fight your systems and fight against all of your people if they treat us wrong. They could have took that approach, but they didn't. She instead said, I'm going to do the heroic thing and fight to keep the peace between both. We're not going to be enemies here. We're going to make peace. She operated according to that standard and was not even willing to kill anyone that was a part of damage control to do that. She was just looking to stop them. And this caused a backing of the community to back her. So that's something that I would say correlates with what we see in this series, looking at it from a Christian perspective. And I definitely hope and pray that in watching this video that you guys are blessed, that you'll go check the show out and see the same things that I'm seeing, and maybe even see a little bit more and bring it to my attention in the comment section, because I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you all so very much, and I hope you have yourself a blessed day. Peace.